Wizard family, welcome back to Beard Wizard Reviews. I'm your host, Beard Wizard Man, also known as Trevor, on social media, links to all of which you can find in the video description below, including the socials for the creators of tonight's piece of art that we're going to take a look at, that we're going to review. This is a comic book review, which we just started doing. I think we've done 2 or 3 others before this. I've done a couple of interviews with comic book creators, but I wanted to start doing indie reviews. So the response that I put out a tweet end of last year looking for people who would like their comic book reviewed on the channel, and the response was just fantastic. So many people reached out, sent me links, review copies, etc., etc. Some people sent me, deals on their books to pick them up cheap or whatever. I've got a huge list of comic books to take a look at. So I've been pulling out the ones that have been catching my eye and taking a look at them and reading them. And tonight's book we're going to take a look at is Kaijus Cowboys. Before we jump into that, though, be sure to subscribe. It's the best way to support the channel. There are other ways in the description, like thebeardstruggle.com, Geek Grind Coffee, and some other stuff that I sell through, my other business, my side business. Those all help the channel, but at the end of the day, just clicking that red button, liking the videos, sharing the videos, those are huge for us. Trying to get to 2,000 subscribers by April, so we're well on our way. We hit 1,690 today, so if we keep pushing, we're going to get there. And I'm stoked. I'm so excited that so many of you people have joined the Beard Wizard family and want to listen to me talk. That's so cool. So anyway, comic book we're taking a look at, like I said, is called Kaijus Cowboys. The title right away caught my interest, which that right out of the gate, that's something that should catch your interest. There are a lot of books out there that the title doesn't matter as much anymore. X-Men, Superman, Batman, Fantastic Four, we know what those are. That title does not need to grab your attention. That title is just telling you what's in the book. You already know what those things are, who those things are, who those characters are. You already know what you're in store for. Hey, Ed, how's it going? Welcome. If you're here with Ed, like I usually say hi. So Kaijus Cowboys is a great title for an indie comic because you're not familiar with that yet, and it catches your interest right away. Big monsters, cowboys, and there's a big robot on the cover. Like, you want to know what's going on here. So right out of the gate, great title, cool cover. The cover is a lot of color, very eye-catching. You're clearly looking out of the mouth of a monster at a robot, and you want to know more. That right there is essential for indie comics, indie books in general, is you've got to catch your audience immediately, at least catch their attention. You've got to hook them quick. But catching their attention, just getting them to say, oh, that's what got me. I saw the title. I was like, I need to know more about this book. I didn't know anything about it yet. I want to know more just because of the title. So right out of the gate, good job for this. I wanted to share some notes from the artist. So this story is by Matthew Blair, and art and effects by Frankie B. Washington. Frankie reached out to me on Twitter. He was one of the ones that raised their hand when I asked for people who wanted to do this, and sent me some links and some notes and shared with me. If I can find it again, bear with me. I'm still relatively new at this. So I'm trying to transition from the format of reviewing music to reviewing comic books, and it's a little different. So also, it's not listed in there. Frankie and Matt are co-creators of this book, so this is their brainchild together. Calls it a 22-page sci-fi Western monster comic. They plan for a 12-issue series. It's set on an alien world in a far-off future, an homage to the Bronze Age of monster comic, which it really is, and we'll talk about why here in a little bit. And the overall story arc deals with the last remnants of humanity aboard a gigantic space ark controlled by an AI called Fathermind. While humans sleep, the chosen planet is being terraformed by groups of robots. Cool backstory already. Unfortunately for the robots, the planet is infested by kaiju and daikaiju that constantly rampage through the various settlement towns, cities, destroying everything in their path. Enter the Hunter bot, one of the many specialty designed robots programmed to fight and kill these monsters. Our cowboy, our protagonist. And the question is, who is right and who is wrong in this tale of colonization? So, clearly the planet has its own populace, the kaiju and daikaiju, and humans, by way of their robots, are invading this planet, so to speak. And then a little bit of information about this. Like I said, they meant for it to be a 12-issue series. It currently does not have a permanent home. They split with their planned publisher back in the summer, but there is a campaign coming in April, Frankie says. So stay tuned to Frankie's Twitter if you're interested after we're done here, and watch for that. Frankie has also been involved with other comic books through Alterna, working on books with Reckless Gleason, and doing some other work. He's a freelance artist. So all of that is on his socials. Check that out when we're done here. So he's right when they tell us that this is an homage to the Bronze Age comics. One of the things that I noticed immediately with the art was how reminiscent it is of the old school comics and strips that we used to see in. It reminded me a lot of reading the strips out of Heavy Metal, the really over-the-top science fiction, the stuff that, like, when you create a comic book, especially a mainstream comic book, it has to be marketable. So you can't go too out there. It has to fit what your average newsstand consumer is going to pick up, unless it's a specialty niche comic or it's already established. So you can't go real crazy with it. But in books like Heavy Metal, where they're compiling a lot of short fiction and short comics, they could go all kinds of crazy because you expect that in Heavy Metal. That's what you're signing up for. And that reminded me of this reminded me of that in the first couple panels. Skip through this. So you could see, you've got robots, very stylized art. And one of the things that you won't be able to see it, we'll look at it when I pull it up close, but it does use a lot of the older art styles that we're used to seeing from the older Bronze Age and newsprint comics and stuff back in the day. If any of you are old enough to remember when comic books didn't come on glossy paper, that's what we were used to seeing. This art style is actually very common in older comics because of the limitations of printing. The way the ink was done, the way the coloring was done, and all of that. Before I get too far into that, I just want to say that this right here, this robot ad is really cool. This comic, much like the last one I reviewed, really taps into the nostalgia of, our childhood. Hold on. What do you got? Sorry, boys and girls. We are being interrupted by a Ripley dog with some Kleenex in her mouth. You goofus. Sorry about that. You stay out of there. Hey, come here. Sorry about that. Live show, boys and girls. That's what happens sometimes. You behave back there. You behave. Go play with your bone. Anyway, it taps into those stories that we used to make up when we were kids. If you had a set of robot cowboys and a set of giant monster toys, darn well you'd be doing this. It wouldn't be exactly this story. It probably wouldn't be about a spaceship colonizing a planet, but darn well if you had robot cowboys and giant monster toys, those two would be fighting many, many times on your bedroom floor or in your closet or in the backyard. So that's one of the things that also drew me to this story, was how it tapped into that storytelling, that childlike storytelling element that we're all familiar with, that takes us back to those days of when we used to do that stuff. And that was huge for me. I had all the He-Man toys. I had all the G.I. Joe toys. I had, I had all these miscellaneous, random toys and the Matchbox cars and all those things. And those all became methods of storytelling for me. I believe early on when I wanted to, before I knew I wanted to be a writer, that's I was still telling stories, and it was all through play. It was through that, and that's one of the things that this book does a good job of tapping into. It you know, all those wild stories, all those wild battles, all those crazy things that we would come up with. It was just would make absolutely no sense, but it did to us, and we loved it. So I love the toy ad. It's very cool. We'll talk about the art in a second, but for the story itself, I enjoyed the story, and this comic does something that I like if it's done well, and they do it well. It doesn't use a ton of dialogue to tell the story. There is good dialogue in here. It's very tight, concise dialogue. It's well-written dialogue, but a great portion of the story is told through the action in the panels, not through text bubbles, which doesn't always work. Some comics try to do that, and it just doesn't fly. It doesn't translate. You can't understand what they're doing. You don't. Either the action doesn't make sense, or you can't follow along with what's going on, or it just, in general, just doesn't tell a story. And here the story is very straightforward in the first issue. It is literally monsters attack this settlement, and the robot cowboy comes to take care of it. That's it. It's pretty simple, but it's very well done in its delivery. And that's one of the things that's nice about this, because an indie comic, you know, it's a tough sell. It's just like an indie book. You've got to get people to buy into something they know nothing about. So you've got to have good art. You've got to have a concise story. You've got to deliver it and hook them quick. Or they're just going to pass it off. They're just going to leave and go read something else. But this book is exactly what it advertises. It is robot cowboys fighting giant monsters. There's nothing. It's not trying to be something else. It's not trying to deliver some deeper story, at least in this first issue. It sounds like they will eventually develop into a larger story, this is a good way to do it. You want to hook your audience with something entertaining, with something fun to look at, fun to read, and maybe sprinkle in some lore, sprinkle in some world building, sprinkle in some character development. But in the first issue, the real thing is you want to get them interested in the characters in the world as fast as possible. And then bring in the other stuff a little bit later, build that story and flesh it out. And sounds like that's their plan, is to talk about the ramifications or discuss the social impact of, you know, what if we were on a giant spaceship and we sent robots down to terraform a planet that was already populated? Do the kaiju count as sentient beings? You know, those kinds of questions that they may explore in the next 11 issues, should they get their Kickstarter off the ground and get everything going. Hope they do, so be sure to watch Jackie's Twitter for that. So the story revolves around, you know, these robots in the settlement. You've got Maintenance Bot, who is this blue guy with the bowler hat, the kaiju, and you've got the hunter robot, the cowboy, who will show up a little bit later here. Initially we're introduced to Maintenance Bot, who appears to be a sidekick of some sort eventually, not in this first issue, a very talkative one, and something that I didn't really notice at first, but I started to realize is your protagonist, our cowboy, doesn't talk. He's the silent type. He comes in and does his thing and walks off into the sunset, which is, you know, that sort of stereotypical cowboy image of the grim, silent type that just comes in and does what he's supposed to do and then heads off, you know, rides off into the sunset or walks off into the sunset. So the voice of the story appears to be Maintenance Bot. It sounds like he's going to be the one that's going to sort of give us the dialogue for the story as we go on. Who knows, though? We're given a mystery, as in, why doesn't the Hunter Bot talk? We don't know yet. We don't know if he can't, if he chooses not to. Maybe he wasn't programmed to talk. I don't know. We don't know yet. So we'll find that out, hopefully, in future issues as they go. So on to the art. which is very important in a comic. A story is great. I'm a storyteller, I'm a writer. The story's got to be there. But just as important, the story in the comic book is the art. It's got to be tight. Now we're going to transition this to, all right. So looking at the art, hopefully you guys can see this, and if you can't, just trust me. This uses a lot of what is termed, there's a couple terms for it. I believe the term, and I had to look this up because I haven't read about this or talked about this in a long time, but there's a process that used to be used in comic books called Ben-Day dots, where they use individual colored dots together to create the different colors, the shading, the shadows, and all of that in a comic book. So if you look at really old newsprint comic books, you see all these little fine dots, and if you look really close, you can see those dots are just different colors, and when seen together, they create a different color, and it was a way of printing on newsprint back in the day, back in the Bronze Age. And it's still used today in comic books that either want to pay homage to those old comics or want to use the same process in the art. The art in this book is fantastic. It is reminiscent of the Bronze Age monster comics, of heavy metal, of those kinds of science fiction, robot, big monster comics. Exactly what you would expect, and delivered exactly what they promised. Backgrounds are great. There's a little bit of clutter in some areas, but it's not bad. There's sometimes where you have to really dig into the image to tell what's going on, but not often. Only in a couple of places. Yeah, I agree, Ed. The animation, like you said, is very vivid. The colors, extremely bright, vivid, very interesting. It's very pretty to look at, which is something you want with a comic book. You want very appealing art. You want it to be very pretty. See if I can find. So your kaijus, very out there, very wild, gigantic, obviously, which they should be. And then you've even got some smaller ones, some sort of dog kaijus running around. And the robots clearly don't know what to do. But this is where a lot of the story, again, is told through the action and not through dialogue. They're very sparse, very concise with the dialogue. So there's not a ton of waste. And some indie comics I've found, and even some professional comics, waste too much space on the talk bubbles, waste too much space on the text. And they don't do that here. They give you exactly what you need to see, exactly the dialogue you need to see, and then it launches into the action. Now, other later issues may have more dialogue. There may be more story to tell through conversation or character development or whatever, but at least in this first issue, they hook you right away. Like, you get, what are we, literally 2 pages in, and the monsters are here. Like, it doesn't waste any time, which is great. That's what we want when we're getting into a new comic, when we're getting into something we've never read before and don't know anything about. I want a reason to keep flipping the page, and this book does that. Excuse me. So we're going through some very colorful art, and we bring our protagonist in very quick as well. So we're already on page 6, and here's our protagonist, our cowboy, the hunter bot, who comes in to save the day, essentially, to fight the kaiju, to save the settlement, and take care of all the monsters. And from here, several pages of no dialogue, just action, just the fight scenes, just what you would expect. And it makes me think of, Pacific Rim. When Pacific Rim came out, that movie looked spectacular through the trailers. And when you went to watch it, if you were expecting anything more than giant robots fighting giant monsters, you were going to be disappointed. You're not going to be comparing Pacific Rim to, an Oscar-nominated drama, or even a lot of action movies of the time, because some of those movies are trying to be more than they were. Some of them were successful at it, but Pacific Rim was exactly what it said it was. And that's what I mean when I say this book delivers exactly what it promises, exactly what you want, exactly what you expect. It is robots fighting monsters. There's nothing else about it, and that's what it should be, because that's what you want. It's not trying to be too much. So a lot of action, very little dialogue. Again, more bright colors. I'm not going to go through every page because I don't want to give away the story. You need to get a hold of Frankie, get a hold of Matt, watch for the Kickstarter and get into it when it comes out. Bottom line, this is a great book. I really enjoyed it. I should have disclosed this at first. I was given a review copy. I didn't buy this one. So you guys know that up front, or I guess at the end, but I did. I enjoyed this a lot. It was a fun read. It was very nostalgic for me. It took me back again to those days of making up stories with my action figures in my bedroom with my brother, or out in the backyard, or, trying to throw robots off of trees because they were dive bombing monsters, whatever it was, coming up with those crazy stories when you're a kid. That's what this is. And that's one of the reasons I loved it. But great book, looks good, beautiful artwork, great colors, well done on the delivery. The story is nice and tight and concise. It hooks you early. It's got good backstory, and it's got a good foundation. When you read there's a section in the first page that tells you what inspired this book, what sort of led them to these stories, and where they got a lot of their sort of ideas and inspiration from. And it comes from all of the best of the old school monster books, movies, anime, comic, all of that stuff. So definitely check it out. Follow the creators' socials. I've got them linked below. Watch for that Kickstarter coming in April for this book. I know it's a little early, but make sure to just follow them. Make a note of it if you're interested. Highly suggest it. I think Frankie said they're going to bring this to Global Comics when they can. So you may be able to get this issue early before the Kickstarter, at least in digital, and see if you're interested in backing the rest of it and getting the rest of the 11 issues out. But I would highly recommend checking them out, checking out Frankie's other stuff, because his art is great. Matt's writing, fantastic. He does have another book out right now. I didn't catch the title, but it's like Roman Legion stuff going on. So check out Matt's Twitter as well. He's got a link to his current project there, so you can see what he's writing now. Highly recommend. Take a look. Let the guys know what you think. Keep an eye out for that Kickstarter. And definitely come back here. Let me know what you think. Ed, everybody else who was here, thank you so much. I appreciate it. If you have any further questions or feedback, let me know, or follow the creators on their socials and ask them. And I will see you guys again soon. You have a great one.